بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله لله تعالى. قال المؤلف رحمه الله: ثم إن المتكلمين حصروا العالم في الجوهر والعرض. Furthermore, the theologians limited the world to particles and transient qualities or fleeting qualities, passing qualities. والعرض في اللغة اسم لما لا دوام له. The arad in the language is the name of what does not have perpetuity, what does not have dawam, that means lastingness. وَلِهَذَا يُسَمَّى السَّحَابُ عَارِضًا. For this reason, the cloud is called the arid, like the thing that fades away. وعند المتكلمين اسم للصفة القائمة بالجواهر والأجسام الزائدة على ذواتها. According to the Muslim theologians, the Sunni theologians, arad is the name of the attribute that exists through the particles and the bodies. Those attributes which are more than the actual self. كالألوان والأكوان والطعوم والروائح والأصوات والقدر والإرادات وهي قريبة من نيف وثلاثين نوعا. Like the colors and the akwan. We'll come back to that in a minute. And the flavors and the smells and the sounds and the powers. Al-Qudar, the plural of Qudrah, and the wills. وَهِيَ قَرِيبَةٌ مِّن نَيِّفٍ وَثَلَاثِينَ نَوْعًا. They are close to 30-something types. It means you can list about 30-something arads. The akwan is 4 things. It says in a footnote, Al-akwanu hiya al-mawjudat. أما عند علماء التوحيد الأكوان هي الموجودات لغة. If that's not added in your copy, لغة, then you can make it a footnote if you want to. الأكوان هي الموجودات أي لغة, if it's not part of the footnote. أما linguistically, the akwan, they are the existing things. From the word kaun. Kaun means being. That's a masdar. Kana yakunu kaunan. Kana, he was. Yakunu, he is. Kaunan, existing or being. So one who has kaun is called kain. Kain. A kain is a being, an existing one. Akwan is the plural of kaun. So al-akwanu hiya al-mawjudat. Akwan, that's the existing things. Lughatan, linguistically. Amma inda ulama'i tawhidi. As for according to the scholars of Tawheed, عندما يتكلمون عن الأعراض, when they speak about the transient qualities, يريدون بها أي بالأكوان أي بالأكوان الحركة والسكون والاجتماع والافتراق. When they talk about the transient qualities and they say akwan, they mean motion, stillness, meeting or connection, and separation or departure. Yani, for something either to be moving or still, because there's no third option here, and it has to be. Or else this pen here, it won't exist if it's not moving or still. So motion and stillness, and also connection, contact, and separation. To not be in contact. This pen must be either in contact with something or not, or else it doesn't exist. So those four are called al-akwan in the technical terminology of the mutakallimun. Ash-sharih. Ash-sharih, that's the sheikh himself. So he has his own footnotes, as well as some footnotes that the brothers have put, the sheikhs have put. وهو أحد نوعي العالم. That the transient quality is one of the two types of the world, meaning two types of the things in the world. وَالنَّوْعُ الْآخَرُ الْجَوْهَرُ. The other type is the particle, or the jawhar. وَيُقَالُ لَهُ الْعَيْنِ. It is also called the ayn. Ayn means, in this context, a thing, a self, a that. Aynu shay, dhatuhu. The ayn of something is the thing itself. وَهُوَ مَا يَقُومُ بِنَفْسِهِ. And that is what exists independently. What is existing independently, by itself. That doesn't mean it exists without being created. It means that its existence is not dependent on another thing's existence. Not talking about the creator here. وَيَعْنُونَ بِمَا يَقُومُ بِنَفْسِهِ أَنَّهُ يَصِحُّ وُجُودُهُ لَا فِي مَحَلٍ يَقُومُ بِهِ. Nah. What they mean by saying that it exists by itself or it exists independently is that its existence is valid without existing through another thing. Yani, another thing is not a vessel for its existence, or another thing is not the substance of its own existence. It has its own existence. سواء كان مركبا أو غير مركب, whether it were composed or not composed. So, according to that, al-jawhar is used to refer to even the body that's made of many particles. It's valid to call it a jawhar. بخلاف العرض, as opposed to the transient quality. فإنه يستحيل وجوده لا في محل. For certainly its existence is impossible without a vessel. إذ عرف ببديهة العقل استحالة وجود حركة غير قائمة بمتحرك. Since it is known by the intuition of the intellect, by the natural function, or it's known by the immediate function of the intellect, the impossibility of motion without existing in something that's moving. Is that clear? Let's back up really quick here, inshallah. Subhanallah, simply what the Shaykh is saying is that what we have learned previously, that there's two types of creations. Something that fills a space and something that by itself does not fill a space. Color by itself does not fill a space. If your color were to change, that would not add or subtract from the space that you take up. Also, your motion and your stillness, those don't add to or subtract from the amount of space that you take up. So these things are existing not independently. They don't actually fill their own space. They exist through something else that's filling a space. That's the most important thing to take away from what the Sheikh said here. ثم القائم بنفسه إما أن يكون مركبا وهو الجسم وأقله جوهران. Furthermore, the independently existing thing would either be composed, and that is the body, وأقله جوهران, and its minimum is 2 particles. وحد الصحيح المؤتلفان فصاعدا. And its correct definition is the 2 united things, and more than that, or more. 2 united things or more. والفرق بين الجسم والبدن أن الجسم أعم من البدن. The difference between the jism and the badan, which both would be translated as body, is that jism is more general than badan. لأن الجسم يطلق على النفوس السماوية وعلى غيرها. Because jism is used for the heavenly selves and other than those. والبدن لا يطلق على الجسم السماوي اصطلاحا. And badan is not used to refer to the heavenly or perhaps celestial bodies in the terminology. وَالْجَسَدُ مُرَادِفُ الْبَدَنِ. And the jasad is a synonym for badan. So those are 3 words in Arabic: jism, jasad, and badan. أو يكون غير مركب وهو الجوهر. Or this independently existing thing would be not composed, and that is the particle, the jawhar. وَالْجَوْهَرُ فِي اللُّغَةِ الْأَصْلِ. And the jawhar in the language is the origin. فَلَمَّا كَانَ أَصْلًا لِلْأَجْسَامِ سُمِّيَ جَوْهَرًا. So since it is the origin of bodies, it is called a jawhar. وَيُقَالُ فِي تَعْرِيفِ الْجَوْهَرِ. And it is said about the definition of the jawhar: الْقَائِمُ بِالذَّاتِ الْقَابِلُ لِلْمُتَضَادَّاتِ. الْقَائِمُ بِالذَّاتِ الْقَابِلُ لِلْمُتَضَادَّاتِ. It is said about the definition of the jawhar that it is what exists independently and is accepting of contrary qualities. It's accepting of disagreeing qualities. contrary qualities. Yani like moving and being still, and being soft or being hard, or etc. All of those qualities, the transient qualities. وأنكرت الفلاسفة والنظام وجود ما سميناه جوهرا المعبر عنه بالجزء الذي لا يتجزأ. And the philosophers, as well as an-Nazam, have denied the existence of what we have called a Johar, what we are calling a Johar. That thing which is also referred to or expressed as the indivisible peace, or the unsplittable peace. والمعبر عنه عند المتكلمين بالجوهر الفرد. And that same one which is expressed by the Sunni theologians as the single particle, Johar Fard, a single particle. وزعموا أن الجزء وإن قل فهو يتجزأ إلى ما لا نهاية له. And they claimed that a piece, no matter how small, it can be split forever. واستدلوا بقولهم, and they used as evidence their saying, yani, they have concluded that from something that they established. What did they say? They said, كل متحيز فيمينه غير يساره. Everything that's contained in a space, its right side must be different from its left side. فيكون منقسما ضرورة. So it has to be splittable by necessity of the intellect. That's what they said. قلنا في الجواب على ذلك, we said in response to that, يجوز أن يكون الذات واحدا والوجهان عرضين قائمين به. It is valid that a self could be a mere singular unit whose sides are qualities. عرض, its sides. والوجهان عرضين, and the two sides are عرض. That means fleeting, not permanent. بدليل أن طرف الخط غير منقسم. And the proof for that is that the edge of a line cannot be split. وإلا لا يكون طرفا. If that were the case, it would not be the edge. By the way, An-Nazam, this is a Mu'tazili, one of the heads of the Mu'tazila. وعند الحساب وكثير من المعتزلة وأوائل المتقدمين من أهل السنة والماتريديين الجسم ما له أبعاد ثلاثة. And according to the mathematicians and many of the Mu'tazila, and the first of the forerunners of Ahlus-Sunnah, the Maturidiyah, yani Maturidis, according to them, al-jismu ma lahu ab'adun thalatha, the jism is what has three dimensions. طول وعرض وعمق, height or length, and width or breadth, and عمق, depth. والأصل عندهم أنهم يسمون الجزء الذي لا يتجزأ نقطة. And the basis, according to them, is that the indivisible part is a speck. ثم إذا تركب بجنبه آخر, then if another one constructs to its side, حدث هناك طول, then there would occur a longness. فيسمى خطا, that's called a line. وإذا تركب من الجانب الآخر, and then if there constructs from the other side, اجتمع طول وعرض, then there gathers length and width, and this is a surface. ثم إذا تركب أعلاه أو أسفله مثل ذلك, then if there constructs to its top or to its bottom like that, يحصل هناك طول وعرض وعمق, there occurs there length and width and depth. وحينئذ يسمونه جسما, and upon that they call it a jism. وإنه لا يتركب إلا من 8 أجزاء, and indeed this does not construct except from 8 pieces. وهذا حكم لا برهان عليه. Sheikh says, after all of that, this is a judgment that has no evidence. إذ لفظة الجسم عبارة عن مطلق التركب في حقيقة اللغة, because the expression jism is an expression of absolute or unrestricted composition in the literal sense of the language. وباجتماع الجوهر إلى الجوهر حصل التركيب, and by the meeting of a particle with another particle there occurs construction. فيكون جسما, therefore it shall be a body. وفي تشنيف المسامع لبدر الدين زركشي ممزوجا بالمتن ما نصه, and in تشنيف المسامع by Badruddin az-Zarkashi, get familiar with that name, the book and the author, Tashnif al-Masami' by Badruddin az-Zarkashi, mamzujan bil-matni, mixed or blended with the original text, meaning it is documented in an explanatory book called Tashnif al-Masami'. This book is explaining Jam'ul Jawami'. The text is Jam'ul Jawami' by Tajuddin as-Subki. So Badruddin az-Zarkashi, he explained Jam'ul Jawami' in a book called Tashnif al-Masami' by blending the explanation into the original text. Ma nassuhu, quote, Sod means asl, meaning original text. So I'll say something like that. وأن الجوهر الفرد وهو الجزء الذي لا يتجزأ ثابت. In the original text, the author said, and that the single particle, which is the indivisible piece, is confirmed. Sheen means ash-sharh, the explanation. ذهب أهل الحق إلى أن الجسم مركب من أجزاء لا تتجزأ بالفعل ولا بالوهم، وتسمى تلك الأجزاء جواهر مفردة. The people of the truth have taken the position that the body is constructed from pieces that cannot be split, not actually nor mentally. وتسمى تلك الأجزاء جواهر مفردة, and those pieces are called indivisible particles. والجسم مؤلف من تلك الجواهر, and the body is composed from those particles. ولا يقبل الانقسام إلى غير نهاية, and it does not accept division infinitely. لا تقطعا لصغره ولا كسرا لصلابته ولا وهما للعجز عن تمييز طرف منه ولا فرضا لاستلزام خلاف المقدور. He said, these particles do not accept division infinitely, not by cutting because of their miniaturization, not by cutting because of their miniaturization, nor by breaking because of their hardness, nor in imagination because of the inability to distinguish any side of it, nor in the imagination because of the inability to distinguish any side of it. And nor can it even be supposed, because that would necessitate what is contrary to destined reality. وخالف في ذلك معظم الفلاسفة والنظام والكندي من المعتزلة, and opposed in that did most of the philosophers and an-Nazam and al-Kindi among the Mu'tazila. وقالوا, they said, الجوهر المتحيز وإن انتهى إلى حد لا يقبل القسمة بالفعل إلى حد لا يقبل القسمة بالفعل فلا بد أن يكون قابلا لها في الوهم والتعقل. They said the contained particle, yani the thing that's existing in a space, even though it does stop at a certain limit, meaning it exists and it's very small, so it obviously has a limit that it's not bigger than. So even though it does actually stop at a certain limit that cannot be split, actually you couldn't like physically split it only because it's too small. But in imagination and in supposition, it can be split. وهو مذهب فاسد, and this is a corrupted madhab, or a corrupted position or opinion. لأنه يؤدي إلى وجود اتصالات لا نهاية لها, because it leads to the existence of infinitely connected pieces. Yani, if they're going to say that the piece can be split forever, then it means then that it must be made of pieces forever. And that's invalid. Some scholars said if it were true that the piece could be split infinitely, then it would be valid to be able to split a piece and produce a mountain. Split a small miniature particle, and from that produce a mountain from all the pieces that you can get out of it. ويؤدي إلى أن تكون أجزاء الخردلة مساوية لأجزاء الجبل. And that leads to saying that the pieces of the mustard seed are equal to the pieces of the mountain. لأن كل واحد منهما لا يتناهى. Because each of them or both of them do not end. ويؤدي إلى أن ما لا نهاية له أعظم مما لا نهاية له. And it also leads to that what has no end could be greater than what has no end. وذلك محال. And that's impossible. And not only that, so that's three absurdities that come from the claim of being able to split a piece infinitely, and you can come with more arguments. Here, when he says it leads to that what has no end would be greater than what has no end, and that's impossible, and that's from a physical perspective we're talking, that's clear. Also works for time. So that's the negation that the world has a beginning. Yani, believing that a piece can be split forever is like believing that the world has no beginning. And who confirms that the world has a beginning, which is correct, he should also confirm, really by necessity, yani, it is by necessity, but there's a link there that the pieces that exist in the world have a starting point. There has to be a piece, which is a base, the basis. Just like there has to be a moment, there's the basis. Because everything other than Allah has created. وَقَوْلُهُمْ إِنَّ الْمُدْرِكَ لَهُ الْوَهْمُ لَا يُعْقَلُ فإن الوهم لا يدرك الأشياء التي لا تدرك بالحواس على ما هي عليه. And for them to say the realizer has his own imagination, this is irrational. لا يعقل. Because imagination does not perceive things that are not perceived by the senses. Yani, you cannot imagine something that you have never sensed. So we can't even imagine the indivisible particle because we've never sensed it. We can't see it, we can't feel it, etc. So then what's our proof that it exists? Intellect. By the intellect, we will infer that from what exists around us. Yani, of course, it could be said that this world here, this is the physical evidence. But I mean, aren't these people arguing with us about this point? Yes. So, وَالْجَوْهَرُ يُدْرَكُ بِدَلِيلِ الْعَقْلِ دُونَ الْحِسِّ. And the particle, the indivisible particle, is realized by the evidence of the intellect, not the sense. لأنه بلغ من صغره إلى أنفات الحس. Because it has reached the extent of miniaturization that it escapes senses. ولهذا لا يحكم عليه الوهم إلا بحكم ما شاهده من المحسوسات. For that reason, the imagination could not judge this particle except by what has been sensed, meaning the imagination will just imagine it to be other than what it truly is. وذلك كحكمه على الواحد الحق الذي لا جهة له. And that is like the imagination's judgment of al-wahid al-haqq, the one with no partner, the one who truly exists and is just. الذي لا جهة له, the one who has no direction. ولا بعض في قضية العقل, and the one who has no piece or part in the judgment of the intellect. بأنه لا بد أن يكون له لون ومقدار ومكان وقرب وبعد ووضع إلى ما سوى ذلك من سائر عوارض الأجسام التي ألفها وأنس إليها. يعني, that is like the imagination's judgment about God, the one who exists without a direction, the one who has no piece or part in the judgment of the intellect. The imagination would judge that it is necessary that he would have a color and a measure and a place and a closeness or a farness and some situation. إلى ما سوى ذلك من سائر عوارض الأجسام, etc., amongst all the different fleeting qualities of the bodies. التي ألفها وأنس إليها, those qualities that he has become accustomed to and that he is familiar with. فيحكم على ما لم يشاهده بحكم ما شاهده منها, and then he will judge what he did not witness with the judgment of what he witnessed. والتخلص من غلط الوهم عزيز يختص به الآحاد, and being clear of the mistake of imagination is rare. It is particular to individuals. فهذا وجه الغلط في هذه المسألة, this is the way of the mistake in this case. وهو أن الوهم يحكم على الجوهر الفرد بحكم الجسم, which is that the imagination will judge the single particle like a body. في قبول القسمة, in the acceptance of division. ويقضي بأنه قابل للانقسام إلى غير نهاية, and then the imagination will dictate that the particle is accepting of division infinitely. والعقل يحكم بإحالته, while the intellect judges that that is impossible. لقيام الدليل على ذلك, because of the evidence about it, or the evidence against it. Ala, you can translate it as against in a lot of cases. وذهب الفلاسفة إلى أن الجسم لا أجزاء فيه بالفعل, and the philosophers went to the position that the body does not have pieces in it actually. وإنما الأجزاء فيه بالقوة بمعنى أنه يستعد لأن ينقسم. They say what it is that it just has the potential to be split. The philosophers are saying it's not made of pieces. This cup is not made of pieces, for example, or my body is just something. But it has the potential to split. وإنما الأجزاء فيه بالقوة, and that the pieces in it are by potential. بمعنى أنه يستعد لأن ينقسم, with the meaning that it is prepared or capable of splitting. لا أن فيه تجزئة في الحال, not that it is actually made of individual pieces. قال فإن قيل, he said, if it were said, وأي فائدة في إثبات الجوهر الفرد, what is the benefit in confirming the single particle? وما القصد بهذه المسألة, and what is the point of this case? فالجواب, so the answer is إنه من مقدمات حدوث العالم, indeed it is among the premises for proving that the world is created. فإن الجسم إذا ثبت أنه مركب من أجزاء مفردة, for certainly the body, if it is confirmed that it is composed of single parts, individual pieces, استحال خلوه عن الأكوان, then it would be impossible for it to be devoid of the four أكوان التي هي عبارة عن الحركة والسكون والاجتماع والافتراق, those that are an expression of motion, stillness, connection, and separation. وهي معان حادثة, and those are created attributes. فترتب عليه أن ما لا يخلو عن الأكوان الحادثة لا يسبقها, and what follows that is that whatever cannot be devoid of created qualities cannot precede them. All right, let's back up and slow down just a little bit here. And we're just about done the mas'ala, inshallah. Here, this is an important question. If it were said, what is the benefit of confirming the single particle? Why talk about it? A Wahhabi would ask us that. What's the point of this case? The answer is that it's among the premises, the introductory matters for proving that the world is created. Because فَإِنَّ الْجِسْمَ, the body, once it's confirmed that it is composed of pieces, then it would be impossible that this body made of pieces would be devoid of, free of motion or stillness, or being in contact with something, or out of touch, out of contact with something. Once we confirm the particles, then we confirm these things, the akwan. And these akwan, you notice that they alternate. If it's moving, it's not still. And if it's still, it's not moving. And it has to be one of them. And likewise, if it's in contact, it's not separate. And if it's separate, it's not in contact. And it can't escape both of them. And they alternate. So those inescapable qualities are created because they alternate. They have a beginning. We sense that. So when we prove that these four things by necessity have a beginning, and that every single body is having these qualities, and that everything in the world is bodies and qualities, then the world is created. So he said, فالجواب إنه من مقدمات حدوث العالم. Indeed, it is from the premises of the createdness of the world. فإن الجسم إذا ثبت أنه مركب من أجزاء مفردة. For indeed, the body, if it is confirmed, or when it is confirmed, that it is constructed from individual pieces, استحال خلوه عن الأكوان, then its being devoid, empty of, or not having the akwan is impossible. استحال خلوه عن الأكوان التي هي عبارة, those akwan which refer to عن الحركة والسكون والاجتماع والافتراق, motion, stillness, connection, and disconnection. وهي, and these four things are ma'anin hadithah. They are, if you want, abstract occurring things, or meanings that occur. فَتَرَتَّبَ عَلَيْهِ, and then it follows from that أَنَّ مَا لَا يَخْلُو عَنِ الْأَكْوَانِ الْحَادِثَةِ, that anything that can't be devoid of occurring qualities, لَا يَسْبِقُهَا, then it could not have been existing before them. If it can't be away from them or avoid them, then there's no way that it could have been existing before them. وَمَا لَا يَسْبِقُ الْحَادِث فَهُوَ حَادِث. And whatever cannot precede an event is itself an event. إِذْ يُؤَدِّي إِلَى مَا لَا أَوَّلَ لَهُ مِنَ الْحَوَادِثِ. Because that, saying that it could exist before the event, that such a thing could exist before the event, that leads to the claim of infinite regression. Infinite regression. It means a beginningless chain of events. وَهُوَ مُحَال, and that's impossible. A beginningless chain of events is impossible. Yani, what's valid? The Muslims know is valid. An unending future is valid. An unending past is impossible. وهذه طريقة أئمتنا في إثبات حدث العالم. This is the way of our imams in confirming the createdness of the world. إذا بسطت وحققت, if it is spread out and said precisely. والقصد بهذه المسألة حصر العالم في الجوهر والأعراض. And the point of this case is to limit the entire world to amounting to particles and qualities. Wallahu a'lam. Let's stop there.